Now, this first overturning is for the first family member to be given the 400-year blessing and curse covenant. It went to Abraham the lawgiver. Now, why is Abraham the lawgiver? Because he was the only one of the three family members of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to be given God's laws. You see, Abraham passed down two laws, the first being the law of tithing, when he gave tithes to Melchizedek, found in Genesis chapter 14. And he gave us the second law, the law of circumcision, found in Genesis chapter 17. Now notice that Abraham the lawgiver is the first and the beginning family member of the covenant. It starts with Abraham, which is why it begins with Abraham, then it goes to Isaac, then to Jacob. Why is that? Because Abraham the lawgiver represents the timeline at the beginning of the world. So here's a mystery. At the end of this first 400-year period, a man, a human being from the same bloodline of Abraham, after spending over 400 years in affliction, will be born having the same function as Abraham. He too will be a lawgiver. So this is why your Savior instructs us to begin with Moses, because Moses represents the beginning. Moses represents the Genesis, which is why Moses wrote the book of Genesis. You see, Moses is from the same bloodline as Abraham. No coincidence. Moses is also a lawgiver to fulfill the role of Abraham the lawgiver. Again, no coincidence. This reveals the mystery, a timeline manifested in an unbroken bloodline. Now, the first 400-year period of affliction begins in Genesis chapter 46 and goes all the way to Exodus chapter 12 verse 40, where it reads that the children of Israel sojourned in Egypt 430 years. So now ask the question, how is it that the children of Israel got to Egypt in the first place? Well, go to Genesis chapter 46, and there you find that Joseph and his 11 brothers are in Africa in a place called Egypt around 1900 BC. There, Joseph even marries an African Egyptian woman named Asenath. Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, are born from this African woman, and they are both blessed by Jacob and both become members of the tribes of Israel. Now, in the process of time, a new African Egyptian pharaoh rises to power, who then enslaves the Hebrews. But remember this, we're on a divine timeline put into effect by God in Genesis chapter 15 verses 13 and 14. And that also states that at the end of this 400-year period, judgment then comes into the world. And also at the end of each of the three 400 periods, you will see the same 14 key precepts. They become a pattern. And this is how the 400 year of affliction comes to an end. Now here are the 14 key events that will close the 400 years. Precept number 1. God honors the threefold covenant. This begins the process of ending the 400-year curse, which is why God reminds Moses of the same covenant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He does this at their first meeting at the burning bush. Go to Exodus chapter 3 verse 6. Exodus chapter 3 verse 6. Precept number 2, God implements Deuteronomy 18:18, where it reads, I will raise up a prophet. This means that the child Moses is born right on time. You see, Moses cannot be born 100 years earlier or 100 years later, because this would have thrown off the 400-year timetable that God is using. So Deuteronomy 18:18 says, I will raise up a prophet like unto thee from among thy brethren, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak all that I command him. That's very important when God puts his words in this man's mouth. That's why Exodus chapter 4 verses 12 through 16. Exodus chapter 4 verses 12 through 16 says, I will be with thy mouth and teach thee what thou shalt say, so that he will put his words in this man's mouth. You're going to see this again. Precept number 3. As the 400 years come to an end, you must see the plague of the murdered young males among this bloodline. That means the children of Israel as young males must become an endangered species. Found in Exodus chapter 1 verses 15 to 22. Exodus 1, 15 to 22. Precept number 4. You must see the precept where the child stays for 3 months and then leaves, which is why Exodus chapter 2 verse 2, Exodus 2 verse 2 states that Moses lived with his mother for only 3 months, then he had to leave. You're going to see it again. Precept number 5. You must see the links to Africa, which means Moses grows up in Africa, in a place called Egypt. He grows up in an African Egyptian pharaoh's home. He even marries an African Ethiopian woman. Go to the book of Numbers, chapter 12, verse 1.